Half-Life 2 is one of the most closest things to a perfect game there is. It's obviously not perfect as everything is, but I think it's one of the closest things we've gotten. Now this video will contain lots of spoilers, so if you somehow haven't played this game, it's been out for over 20 years and it was like free on Steam like a month or two ago. I highly recommend going and playing it for yourself because it is definitely worth it. In many ways, I feel like Half-Life 2 is very similar to the original Star Wars movie that came out in the 70s. Not only did it raise the bar for how stories were told and basically standardize how the hero's journey style of writing goes, but it also, just like Half-Life 2, holds up extremely well in visuals. The movie basically used practical effects for almost everything, but the effects still hold up pretty well today. Additionally, Half-Life 2 also raised the bar for how games told their stories and essentially set the standard for how games should sort of go out to achieve that. Half-Life 2 is also very similarly the hero's journey style of a video game, just like Star Wars was. So for similar games that also follow a character's journey as a hero, Half-Life 2 essentially became the standard for that and is something I will address later on in this video. If you don't know what I'm talking about when I refer to the hero's journey, here's an image of what it is, but I'll try and describe it briefly. It's basically an outline for a style of plot that's usually used in films, but I guess can be applied to books and especially video games, and I feel like Half-Life 2 took from it a lot. It's basically how the main character is followed as the hero and how they, I guess, progress through their story. In my film class, when learning about the hero's journey, we watched Star Wars to sort of analyze it and show how it, I guess, achieved the hero's journey outline. And that's probably because Star Wars kind of invented or at least revolutionized the hero's journey style of plot, which is why I brought it up in the first place. I was going to do this whole bit in the video where I talked about how the hero's journey applied to Half-Life in every little way, but I really don't think it was necessary. Just know that Half-Life 2 follows the hero's journey outline pretty much exactly. And that's basically why I made the analogy of Half-Life 2 to Star Wars in the first place. The reason why I mentioned the hero's journey in the intro is because Half-Life 2 did a lot, especially when it came to writing plots and world building in games. It really just set the standard. For example, the game does a great job of going by the show don't tell philosophy, where instead of telling you about the game world, it shows it to the player and lets them discover it for themselves. And the world it's trying to show you itself is amazing. It's very well crafted. It's a dystopia where the world is fallen under control of some sort of alien force. And combined with the amazing show don't tell philosophy, it makes for an amazing world that the player is able to experience. The initial reveal of City 17 is one of the best aspects of show don't tell in all of gaming ever. I mean, I still see videos of people talking about it today. The player gets to witness all the atrocities that Combine is doing in the city, and it never tells you any of this. You just simply observe. A game that really comes to mind when talking about these aspects of Half-Life 2 is BioShock. It's very similar to Half-Life 2 in the sense that it also takes place in a dystopian world, has the very sort of similar hero's journey style plot, and even down to the progression of the game feels eerily similar to Half-Life 2. And I'd love to do a video on BioShock in the future. In my opinion, it's sort of the improved version of Half-Life 2. You can take away a lot of elements from BioShock that you can just flat out tell were inspired by Half-Life 2, especially the weapon progression. Anyways, it wasn't simply aspects of storytelling where Half-Life 2 was extremely influential. The visuals and art style are all amazing aspects of Half-Life 2, and like I said before, they hold up extremely well today. The lighting, textures, character models, animations, and honestly a whole lot more probably were leagues ahead of almost anything else that was out at the time. For example, again, take the initial reveal of City 17, like I said before, and the train station before it, and it all goes to show the crazy lighting, textures, character models, even the facial animations of the civilians. It's great. I mean, the first mission just really goes to show like how far ahead the game was. The animations are also fantastic, especially the dialogue. For 2004, they still look great. And at the time, they were, if not the best animations a game had. The game also has a great art style and just overall aesthetic. It has this gloomy feel combined with the Eastern European setting and architecture, making for an overall dark but contrastingly beautiful vibe of the game. My favorite section in the entire game in terms of the visual ambience and aesthetic of it is the part where you have to climb under the bridge in the buggy section. The coastal vibe combined with the sort of foggy surrounding and the amazing soundtrack creates for an amazing set piece. It is easily one of the best moments in the game by far. But there's a bunch of other areas in the game that come to mind that I'll just name a few. Like the entire section of Ravenholm is amazing. And also the evening where you go along the shore right before getting into Nova Prospect is one of the best areas in the game as well. Another aspect of Half-Life 2 that I at least noticed may have been the source of inspiration for some games was letting you be completely overpowered at the end of a playthrough. At the end of Half-Life 2, you get the supercharged gravity gun while all your other weapons are vaporized, and it basically becomes the most overpowered thing ever. Also get tons of extra shield to go along with that. Games like Call of Duty do this a lot. Like, for example, at the end of Black Ops 1, you drive a helicopter around and basically rain down missiles and gunfire from above and are pretty much invincible. And then once you're on the ground, you're handed a FAMAS and basically just given a bunch of guided missiles. So, like, you're given, like, basically the best gun in the game along with guided missiles. Like, it's broken. But it's done on purpose to make the player feel powerful after the end of their journey. Another way that I feel like Half-Life 2 did well, but maybe not raised the bar, was through its enemy AI. I feel like the enemy AI is not too smart to where it feels overpowered against the player, but not too stupid to where it's just way too easy to play up against. I feel like it's a good balance. Now I'm going to talk about some things that I think Half-Life 2 does really well that are pretty unique to the game. The first thing is the physics puzzles, and in my opinion, they're pretty fun. I like them a lot. They're spread so far and few that they don't feel repetitive, and when they do come up, they're actually pretty fun and are a nice break from the traditional gameplay. I feel like a lot of games just haven't touched physics puzzles because they're really hard to get right. They can be really frustrating sometimes and just not enjoyable. But like I said, I think Half-Life 2 really splits them up enough to where when they do pop up, they're a fun surprise. Like, I was never frustrated by any physics puzzle in this game whatsoever. My guess is that physics puzzles are just hard to implement in a fun way that doesn't make them frustrating. And a lot of games, physics can be pretty frustrating if it plays a big role. A game that comes to mind is like Fallout 4. Trying to like pick up objects and put them on things was always like a nightmare. Another amazing way that Half-Life 2 excels at its gameplay is through its weapon design. The game has 10 weapons, 11 if you include the bug bait, and 3 of those weapons have secondary functions like a grenade launcher on the MP7 or the energy ball on the AR2 or even the double shot on the SPAS-12. Now for this section of the video, I'll be putting the weapons in a tier list format. I definitely didn't get this idea from Pyrocynical's Cruelty Squad video. For starters, there's the crowbar. It's probably a good C tier. It's basically useless in combat, but it's good for opening up crates you find on the ground for resources or destroying barricades on walls or doors. It's just good utility. A pistol. This is another C tier weapon. It's basically like the jack of all trades weapon, I'd like to say. It's okay at most ranges you'll fight at in the game. And it does enough damage to kill, but is not super effective. You get it early on, but it has some later use in the game if you want to conserve ammo with other guns. The SMG is a B tier weapon. It's really only good in close quarters. Its damage is not great at all, but it shoots very fast and can kill enemies pretty quickly if you're close up and hit headshots. Honestly, the grenade is a D tier weapon. I almost never used it except when you have to clear out sniper nests or have to clear a combine soldier on a turret. The issue I have with grenades is that the delay is so much on them that by the time I threw them, they either bounced away or just the combine or whoever I threw it at just sort of walked away from it, intentionally or not. They're just not satisfying to use in my opinion. The next weapon you get is the revolver, and this is an S tier weapon. This is my favorite gun in the game easily. It sort of fills a get out of jail free card role because you can one-shot almost any enemy if you aim for the head at least, and it can be really fun to just run around and hit those headshots and get those one-shots on enemies. The only downside with this weapon is that you barely get any ammo for it the entire game, because if you did, it would make it completely broken. It's still an S tier either way because it's just so fun to use. The gravity gun is another S tier weapon, and it's really not just to call this a weapon because its main use is for allowing the player to interact with the world. It basically has infinite ammo as long as there's physics objects around, and is a great way to just clear and grab objects. It's a great gun that lets you interact with the world in a great way. The shotgun is an A tier weapon. It's very effective at close range and extremely effective at point blank range. You'll end up relying on this gun very much in the late game because of how strong it is. Also, with the secondary function, it makes you make the conscious decision of deciding whether you want to shoot 2 shots at once or just 1, which in my opinion spices up the gameplay quite a bit. The AR2 is another S tier weapon. It has very high damage, is full auto, it's effective up to long range if you tap fire it, it kills quickly, it's best used in medium range, and it's just another gun that will carry you throughout the end game. The secondary fire, in my opinion, is kind of useless. It's best used in small rooms, but even then, there's a possibility it just does nothing. Aside from that, I still think it's an amazing weapon. The missile launcher is a B tier weapon. It's basically solely meant to take out aircraft, but you'll usually have some rockets left over after doing that, and it becomes sort of just like a get out of jail free card again. You can only carry 3 rockets with it, so after you use the 3 rockets, it basically just becomes a blank item in your inventory. It's gonna get a B tier because it's fun to use because you're able to guide the missiles around, but honestly, besides from that, the crossbow is another B tier weapon. I might give it an A tier, but honestly, it's mostly a B tier. It's equipped with a zoom and has the ability to one-shot pretty much any enemy in the game at any range. But the issue with this weapon stems from the fact that the crossbow bolts take time to travel. They're not hit scan like every other weapon in the game, causing you having to try and line up shots where most of the time, and I mean most of the time, an enemy will dodge it. Because if you're shooting this thing at long range, and even if they're standing still, the time it takes for the bolt to travel gives the Combine enough time to just randomly walk around. The fact that it has the scope on it and the ability to one tap at any range makes it show that the developers intended for this to be a long range weapon, but you almost will never be using it anything past medium range just because of the time it takes for the bolt to travel. It still gets B tier in my opinion because even though it suffers from everything else I just said and the ammo is quite rare, it has one tap potential, which obviously makes it a good weapon. So those are all the weapons of the game, and the reason why I think the weapon design is so good is because every gun in this game fills a role. There's not one gun you will never not be using. You'll constantly be switching guns to fill a role. The only weapon that I don't think fits a role is grenades. We honestly didn't even need those in my opinion, but you know, every other gun I feel like has some sort of role it plays, which makes the gunplay extremely engaging because you're constantly switching weapons. Another aspect of this game that is very good is how weapons and mechanics of the game are introduced to the player. For example, something as simple as giving the shotgun to the player while they have to fight the zombies is actually a pretty effective way at introducing the shotgun's close range capabilities to the player, because the zombies are only limited to melee attacks, meaning that most of the engagements you're going to have with them are going to be at close range. Another aspect is how the game gives the player the crossbow at a vantage point to demonstrate its long range capabilities, even though they're not that great. Generally, I feel like the mechanics are shown to the player in a way that makes them feel like they're figuring out for themselves and not just being shown or told what it does. Another aspect of the game that I think is done very well is the Citadel at the middle of City 17. It's a massive monolith that really demonstrates the scale of the Combine. From the start of the game, the Citadel is looming over the city, and it sort of serves as this constant reminder of the Combine. Now, my favorite feature of the Citadel is how giant the game goes to make it feel. At the end of the game, for some reason, Gordon decides to get into some giant, like, cage thing that's meant to transport the, like, prisoners of the Citadel that brings him to Dr. Breen. It kind of feels like a bit random, like why would he just make himself a prisoner? But it does lead for a very cool scene where Gordon is essentially carried throughout the Citadel, and it goes on for a while. But as Gordon moves around, it shows all the infrastructure for the Citadel. For example, the trains that you see going throughout the city and that served as a sort of gameplay element at the start can be seen driving through the Citadel, giving the player insight that the Citadel sort of serves as a train station for all the trains the Combines use. Additionally, you can see all the Combine's aircraft taking out from it, which in my opinion kind of shows like the resistance is sort of futile. Had it not been for Gordon's intervention, the resistance probably would not have worked. By showing a giant fleet of these aircrafts taking off inside of the Citadel, it sort of makes them feel like some expendable resource from the Combine. These aircrafts that felt like a pain to take down are just being sent out in large numbers like they hadn't even lost any. And as you make your way to the top of the Citadel, you can keep looking out down to the ground. The city and pretty much everything just become little blips of dots on the ground of light. And now what was once a pretty much glorified cutscene is actually a pretty engaging scene because you really get to feel the scale of the Citadel. The best way I can describe it is like going up a lift hill on a roller coaster. For example, in Half-Life 1, there was the scene at the start of the game that really emphasized the scale of the Black Mesa facility where you go in the train cart throughout the facility to get to where Gordon works. But in my opinion, this scene is just kind of boring. Like, it shows you the scale of the facility, but it doesn't really mean anything to the player as they're going through it. It's just long for the sake of being long. With the Citadel, there's meaning behind it. You go into this giant tower that's been looming over you all game, and what's inside is pretty much a mystery to the player. The scene is both interesting as it answers questions that the player might have had to what was inside the Citadel and what was the point of it. But it also serves as a way to emphasize the size and scale of it. Another aspect that I like about this game is how it guides the player without any sort of direction or arrow pointing them of where they need to go. The levels are just designed so well that having some sort of direction marker really just isn't needed. Whether it be by just highlighting a entrance with light that a player needs to take, or by naturally blocking off certain areas to naturally guide the player to the correct path. The game does a great job of inexplicably showing you where to go, making the player feel like they're guiding themselves through the world. Another aspect of the game that I really like is that time passes as you play through certain sections to make it feel like time is really going by as you play through the game. The game starts out maybe like morning or midday, and then by the time you get to the hideout Alex is in, it's like evening. And then by the time you get to Ravenholm, it's night. And then when you leave Ravenholm, it's morning again. And the time change is done so well because you're constantly loading into new levels or new portions of the world. You don't really feel time going by. It's not jarring at all. It feels gradual. Like the game takes advantage of each load space to sort of change the time of day. Another aspect of the game that I really enjoy is the simplistic HUD. I feel like a lot of games from these eras had HUD elements that felt maybe intrusive or just excessive, like they bloated your screen a lot. While on the other hand, Half-Life 2's HUD essentially only tells the player what they need to know. The ammo of their gun, their health, and the suit power. Your weapons in your inventory are also shown, but these sort of dynamically go away and really only appear when you change weapons. And even then, this aspect of the HUD is also very just simple, only telling the player what they need to know. And even at that, the HUD elements are essentially just text on a screen. There's no fancy background around them or some tacky border. It's simply there just to inform the player of what they need to know. And I feel like having HUD elements like this are great because it allows the player to focus on the game completely without having some distracting or tacky HUD element to take away from it. Finally, the last thing I have to say about this game in terms of how great it is the soundtrack. And in my opinion, it's very, very good. I don't know, I just think the soundtrack matches the game like very well. Like the vibe of the soundtrack matches the vibe the game has. Like I know that's weird, but like that, I don't know, it just does a great job at that. Like the Half-Life 2 soundtrack, you couldn't put it on a different game. Like the Half-Life 2 soundtrack only works for Half-Life 2. I get that one is very subjective, but it's just that's my take on it. Now, I know I've spent the vast majority of this video completely glazing Half-Life 2, but I do think there are some bad aspects that could use improvement. Nothing's perfect, and like every game has some mistakes it made. For starters, and this one is probably obvious, and most people would probably expect it, but the boat section. This section drags on for so long. I feel like it's fun at first, but it gets really repetitive fast because for the first like half of it, you're just driving a boat. And then the second half, you get a gun on your boat. But like, it's just basically the same thing as the first half, but now you shoot some things. And I know this is one of 2 vehicle sections in the game, the buggy being the other one. And I think the buggy is a great vehicle section. I love the buggy way more. The terrain varies and you have different places you go to, but the boat section is basically the same thing the whole time. You're just in like a canal and then like a swamp area at the end. Like it all just kind of feels the same. Like I feel like this section goes on for like 30 minutes too long at least. I feel like you should have gotten the gun way earlier on the boat and then have it end a bit earlier. Also, I think the way you select weapons could be better. On my outline, I have this as weapon selection could be better. I don't mean the actual selection of the weapons that you get. That's really good. That's like one of the most perfect parts of the game. I mean like how you actually select the weapons in your inventory. The weapons are sort of like in these categories that you have to scroll through. And each category sort of is bound to a key on your keyboard. So like if you wanted to get one of the guns from category 4, you'd have to press like the 4 key on your keyboard a bunch of times until you got to that one, or you would just like basically scroll through all the guns until you got to the one you want. I feel like there's a better way of doing this, like just making each key a gun. There's only like 10 guns in the game, so you could use like keys 1 through 0 and then have like grenades bound to G or something. I feel like that aspect of the game definitely needs some improvement. Then my last complaint with the game is that the AR2 kind of feels like it can be a crutch sometimes. Like it's too overpowered a little bit. You get it in a spot in the game where it makes sense to get a gun that good, but I still think it's like it could have maybe not been nerfed, but maybe buffed the, I don't know. It just feels really overpowered when compared to the other guns. Like it does well in pretty much every situation from point blank to medium range. Like it's a lot easier to just keep your AR2 out and shoot everything in front of you than it is to like switch to the perfect gun for that situation. Like the AR2 is just kind of like a crutch of a gun. Yeah, ending off on the note of the AR2, that just about sums up everything I have to say about this game. Half-Life 2 was not only influential but extremely timeless of a game. Half-Life 2 does a lot right and has barely any misses in my opinion, which in my opinion makes it one of the closest things to a perfect game we have. There's not a lot you can critique with this game. In fact, I think most of my critiques can be counted on like one hand, which is really saying something in my opinion. Overall, if you haven't played Half-Life 2, I think it's a great game and you should definitely pick it up. And like it was free on Steam. I think I might have said this in the intro, but it was free on Steam like literally probably like 6 months ago by now, but still it was free on Steam. You should have picked it up when you had the chance. Half-Life 2 was one of the first games I bought when I first got my PC, and I definitely don't regret that. The fact that it was made in 2004 and still holds up and looks this good today says something about the quality of the game. But with all that said and done, I really hope you enjoyed this video. I spent a long time on this, a lot more than I should have because I put it off for a few months. But if you found it entertaining or in the slightest bit informative, please consider dropping a sub or leaving a like, and please feel free to comment. I'd love to hear what you guys have to think about this and what you'd have to say about a game like this. Do you guys agree with the tier list I made, or do you think some of my takes were wrong? I want to hear it. I genuinely do. But yeah, but with everything said and done, I really hope you enjoyed this video, and that's it. See ya.
I do apologize for what must seem to you an arbitrary imposition, Dr. Freeman. I trust it will all make sense to you in the course of... well, I'm really not at liberty to say. In the meantime, this is where I get off.